Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KidBadger.com, here to bring you a little how-to, and today we're going to install this guy, our flat face trigger by Vickers Tactical and Tango Down, into our Gen 5 Glock. We will, of course, be installing this in the mobile gunsmithing station. Actually, it's just the back of the vehicle. As far as tools we'll need, you will need a hammer. It can be a small one. On top of that, ideally something that has some holes because we're going to be punching stuff. This helps. And then, of course, we'll need a punch, pretty small little one. Of course, our trigger and whatever Glock, in this case, a Glock 19. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get this started. Once we remove the slide, we need to go ahead and further take this down so we can get access to our trigger. For that, we're going to need to remove these pins on our Glock. Obviously, you can use a Glock Armor's tool, or obvious choice, the Vickers Tactical Tango Down Glock tool. Basically hides right there in that empty space. But you can either use this or just press these pins out. Ultimately, we're going to remove that pin right there, and then this back pin as well. Once we get those guys out, we can pull all this stuff out. It all is going to come out. At this point, we want to go ahead and deal with this guy. To make it easier, you can, of course, just remove this. So now we're working with that. So if you notice on your factory Glock trigger, it's smooth on one side, and on the other side, there's a pin. That is where this punch is going to come into play. Before we proceed, we're going to take a deep breath and recognize that we're at the point of no return. If you take a look on the back of this, there's a big warning that says this needs to be installed by a certified armor. Am I certified armor? I'm not. Why is that warning there? Because Tango Down doesn't want stupid people wrecking this and then calling them and being like, hey, like I used a 14-pound sledgehammer and somehow it broke. So if you can follow instructions and are mildly mechanically inclined, I will show you how to do this. Looking on the trigger right here, we have this silver pin. We cannot see it here, but honestly, we're going to make that thing go all the way through. So ideally, something like this where you have a cutout, want to go ahead and line that pin up with the recessed area on the other side. Take a punch. This one could honestly be a tiny bit bigger, but it's going to work. I'm going to get that lined up, point of no return, take my massive hammer and start tapping this guy through. At that point, it's pushed all the way through. Look over on the other side, there's my pin. Did it go far enough? Not quite. I know that because this bar did not come out. Tap it a couple more times there, all the way through. This bar comes out. At this point, we can now put our flat face trigger on here. When we go to reassemble this, if you forgot how this was about 20 seconds ago, our trigger bar is going to go in here. On the back of our trigger shoe, we have two slots. We want the larger one on the right. It's going to drop in right there. And if you're curious and don't know, the top of our trigger bar here, and then the piece dips down forward, it's going to drop in, and this opening for the pin that's going to go through our Glock, hold all that stuff together, is going to be forward. Do not do anything crazy like smash this pin through and have it like that. Otherwise, you're pretty much done. So we're going to go ahead, make sure this is put in the correct way, and then this pin is now what we're going to have to go ahead and hammer in, and at that point, we should be good. When we install this, we can go ahead and drop it in, and we can look on this back side, make sure it's lined up, and use our finger to go ahead and press that pin in and get it where it needs to be. At this point, we just need to hammer it home. So to do that, I'm going to set it on some sort of flat, hard surface, take my amazing hammer, and bam, get that guy flush. Check the other side, flush there too. Now, we pretty much just need to reassemble our pistol. To reassemble this, I'm going to go ahead and get these two guys back together. Once we've done that, we're going to drop all this back into our frame, get our trigger started, rear piece in, make sure it's seated, get our slide release, drop that down in, then get our locking block, and we're going to push this in, get it where it needs to go, make sure it's flat, make sure it's seated in there, everything's where it needs to be. Then we're going to take our pin, push this guy through, once we've done that, if need be, push it the rest of the way with our punch. And then our last pin back here, go ahead and get that guy started. Making sure our holes are lined up. If we need to, again, take our punch, make sure it's not protruding one side or the other. Then we just slide back on this, and we are good to go. Time to function check. We now, of course, want to make sure that this is functioning properly, safely. So, going to make sure this thing is clear. Once we're clear, I'm going to go ahead and make sure the trigger is functioning. So, if I try and depress the trigger without actually the little blade in front, that's the safety. If I don't depress that, trigger shouldn't move. Then, when I depress that, there it goes. Cycle it, it resets, again, it breaks again. Now we know that the trigger is actually functioning properly and safely. Take this thing to the range, have some fun with it. And that ultimately is how you install a Vickers Tactical Tango Down flat face trigger into a Gen 5 Glock in a 1989 Suzu Trooper mobile gunsmithing station out in the woods. Ultimately though, it's not that difficult. Some pretty simple instructions, just don't wreck it. But if you feel confident, do it. If not, go ahead and find yourself a gunsmith to do it, and yeah, get yourself a nice new trigger. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.